Greetings, dear ladies. I am Kryon of Magnetic Service. I know where I am, and I also know who is here. It is obviously being recorded prior to your event, but I know who is here. I feel the warmth of your personalities, of your expectations, of the beautiful thoughts that you would have. I know of the countenance and the gentleness that is here. As many times as I do this, I take you back to a specific time in these areas you call Lemuria. I remind you that Lemuria spans so much time, and yet we focus on a gentle time in Lemuria, a time before it starts to submerge, a time of stability, a time of maturity, a time when the Sisterhood was active. The Sisterhood was not called a sisterhood, and eventually I will give you the name, but not yet. For I don't want you to be consumed upon some kind of a name that would be different than you would imagine. And instead, I want you to have the togetherness and to feel the camaraderie of all together. For this is the purpose of the moment. Is it possible that you, group of women, have been part of this kind of thing that long ago? Again, I know who is here. Spanning all of the eons and the thousands of years. Is it possible that you sat together before, perhaps with other faces, perhaps even with what you would call other souls? The answer is yes, it brings you here. The synchronicity is complete. And once again, you feel that which is the sisterhood of togetherness. It is not an organization. It's an honoring of family. And the subject that I wish to speak of in these few moments, in this evening, will center around Meliha. She has had the meaning of her name given as close as it can be in the language today of Hawaii. For there are similarities in language from then to now, based on some of the original words that are still used today. Basically, her name means the celebration of life. The breath of life itself is being celebrated, and that is her name. She should know that her name is not unique, and we have not said this before. For there were certain priestesses, that is to say, leaders of the sisterhood, who, like kings and queens, all took the same name. So Meliha didn't simply mean a certain thing, it also gave her status. And the status that she had was that of the leader of the sisterhood. And the sisterhood was not a social gathering, it was a spiritual gathering. For the sisters would gather, and their business was the spirituality of the continent of Lemuria. And so there were many sisterhoods, and she had one. There were many priestesses who all had the same kind of name. And so you might call this the Meliha Sisterhood, and that would be accurate. And it was known in that fashion even back then. After the life that she had, which spanned several Lemurian lifetimes that were normal, her name was passed then to her family. And in the tradition, she would select who would then replace her. Now, what I want to tell you today is that this is her birthday in this lifetime. And this is well known by you. So I wanted to review with you what happens to a Lemurian woman on her birthday. This should not surprise you. If I ask you, based upon the past channelings, what you thought would be on a birthday for a Lemurian woman, especially one in the Sisterhood, what do you think it would be? The last time I talked to you, we spoke of how birth was accomplished in Lemuria. We talked about the gathering and the singing of women together during the birth process to ease the pain, while they held hands and the birth was underwater. We spoke of the beauty of this and the gentleness and the peace of the child. Can you imagine the child's first sound when it emerged above the water and the cord was cut? Was the singing of women. Even the warriors and the men of ages, their first sounds was the singing of women. And this was soothing to them. And so it was and still is appropriate that the sisterhood would then return to the ocean. And the birthday is then a celebration of the birthday. And it would be a water ceremony, a beautiful one. You would simulate the coming out of the water with singing. This was looked forward to, and there were specific songs that they would sing just for you. I guarantee you, ladies, that if you heard the songs, you would weep and your Akash would remember. This is the birthday. It is the same for men, but slightly different. For they also would have a water immersion ceremony, only not necessarily with the women singing. There was a separation. But indeed, all birthdays on Lemuria were seen as a water event, and returning to the ocean was part of the celebration on that day. Many times the days were not known, and so it was fine just to have an approximation based upon that which was known by the stars and the sun. It didn't matter. Now, Meliha, what you should know is this, that all Melihas and all the priestesses that were involved in the sisterhoods all around that magnificent place had a second ceremony. After they were done with the women, and they had sung the songs and gone through their process, they had a 3-day journey to the top of the mountain. For this is where the rejuvenation process took place for the priestesses and for the certain ones of royalty that had extended lifetimes, and we have spoken of it before, where the temple of rejuvenation was in that very cold place. And so it was as important as the birthday, because an extended life is another birthday. And here's what you should know. I will not give away how many times the process was done at the temple, but it was always done on your birthday. So you might say you can be born again. That is to say that you rejuvenation for the next life and the next life, all taking place on your birthday. Your birthday at this life, this day, has a numerological equivalent of a 1. And this is new beginning. Let this day be a new beginning for you, Meliha. Let it be also for those who wish to join in remembrance of what it was like for each one of theirs. Perhaps you would consider redeveloping through the memory of Meliha a ceremony just for birthdays. Maybe, just maybe, the song will come back to you as well. And so it is.